Nicolas Maduro is a figure who for many years seemed untouchable. He came to power after Hugo Chávez's death and inherited not only the presidency but an entire system built on loyalty, fear, and control. To some, he remained a symbol of resistance to external pressure. To others, the face of a shattered economy and repression. But in the first days of January 2026, the world saw what still looked like a political thriller. Maduro was seized by US forces during an operation in Caracas, removed from the country, and taken to the United States, where a criminal case was activated against him on charges linked to drug trafficking and narcoterrorism. As of today, January 5, 2026, Maduro is in US custody and is going through the first stages of court proceedings in New York. He is brought to a federal courthouse in Manhattan for an initial appearance. The court states the charges, formalizes his status, and sets the next steps: motions, hearing schedule, and detention conditions. A man who for years ruled a nation is now inside a system where every word and movement becomes part of a legal record. Maduro's story did not begin in the military or in elite universities. His biography long seemed atypical for a Latin American leader. A man from a modest background, union work, party discipline, and a slow rise inside a political machine. He was not the kind of figure who wins stadium crowds, but the kind who survives bureaucratic combat. In such regimes, the victor is often not the brightest star, but the most resilient, the one who does not break under pressure, and does not lose control when everything burns around him. Besides Chávez, Maduro learned the central lesson: power is not a title, but a system of levers. He watched how a vertical chain is built, how resources are distributed, how the security apparatus becomes the regime's foundation, and how external criticism is turned into proof of a nation under siege. When Chávez publicly named him successor, it was more than a personal choice, it was a signal to the system. The revolution must continue, and doubts must be crushed. And when Maduro won the 2013 election, the country entered an era where decisions were less about development and more about survival and power. By that time, Venezuela's economy ran on oil, and oil was both a blessing and a curse. Any drop in revenue struck the budget, and the budget fed everything: social programs, imports, elite loyalty, and the security apparatus. As the crisis deepened, the country slid into shortages and disorder. In everyday life, this did not look like macroeconomics. It looked like empty shelves, vanishing medicine, power outages, and water delivered on a schedule. Tension grew in the streets along with protests, clashes, and a bitterness that split families and neighborhoods. The government responded by tightening control. The worse life became, the harsher the system got. Over time, the regime's main pillar became the security forces, and in that same period Maduro's global image shifted from a controversial leader to a symbol of authoritarianism, and then to a figure around whom criminal accusations of international scale began to form. The accusations against Maduro were built on the idea that parts of the Venezuelan state had become tools of criminal schemes. In the US narrative, the core claim is this: senior figures in the regime protected cocaine routes, engaged in corrupt deals, used links with armed groups, and profited from drug transit. In that logic, Maduro was portrayed not as a politician who merely looked the other way, but as someone allegedly at the center of the system, directing it. Maduro for years answered with a mirror image. All of it was political warfare and an attempt at regime change. He spoke of blockades, sanctions, foreign interference, and an imperialist script. Inside the country, this rhetoric worked like cement. The greater the external pressure, the easier it is to explain why life is deteriorating, and the simpler it becomes to label opponents agents. The political conflict became a war of meanings, where each side told its own version of truth and reinforced it with power. By early 2026, the conflict reached a point where statements were no longer just words. In the pre-dawn hours of January 3rd, an operation unfolded in Caracas. Reports spoke of strikes on specific targets and special forces actions, after which Maduro was seized and removed from the country. For Venezuela, the shock was not only political but psychological. A state that had spent years projecting total control suddenly appeared vulnerable at its very center. Events then moved fast. In the United States, officials stated that Maduro had been brought onto US territory and placed under federal authority. Almost immediately, it was said he would be tried in New York on cases tied to drug trafficking and weapons. To some viewers it looked like justice, to others like abduction, and to many like a dangerous precedent. If a sitting leader can be forcibly removed and tried elsewhere, then the rules of the international game are changing in real time. While the world argued over words, the reality of procedure began. As of today, January 5, 2026, Maduro has been brought to a federal court in Manhattan for an initial appearance. This is the moment when a loud political story turns into a legal one. In court, slogans do not matter, charges do, along with the defendant's status. The statutes cited, the structure of the defense, and the hearing schedule. Courts do not recognize precedent as a protective title. They recognize defendants and counsel, filings, transcripts and rulings. In parallel, a second front forms around the case. Diplomatic. Inside Venezuela, a struggle begins to run the system without its central figure. External actors try to determine who now truly controls the security forces, resources, and financial flows. In such moments, decisions are often made not in public statements but behind closed doors. Who is willing to cooperate? Who will resist? Who will switch sides to survive? And the longer uncertainty lasts, the higher the risk of an internal split. Another layer of the story is informational. Immediately after the seizure, networks flood with videos, photos, leaks, and supposed insider details. In such a storm, it's difficult to separate documents from edits, real footage from fabrications, and truth from an emotional virus. Yet that is modern politics. An event happens once in reality, and then happens thousands of times in people's minds through different versions, narratives, and fears. For a documentary film, this is dangerous and useful at the same time. Dangerous because viewers may begin to doubt everything. Useful because it captures an era where facts live alongside illusions, and information waves steer the emotions of millions. In that reality, Maduro's fate becomes not only a court case but a media symbol. Some see the end of a dictator, others the start of a new colonial era, and others a warning to leaders everywhere.
The outside world shifts its tone as well. An event of this scale forces governments to ask uncomfortable questions. If this is possible here, could it happen elsewhere? If seizing a leader is justified as combating drug trafficking, who draws the line between a criminal case and war? If force becomes a method of restoring justice, what will international rules look like tomorrow? These questions have no neat answers, because every answer runs into the reality of power. Today, Maduro stands before the U.S. justice system, yet the paradox is that his fate no longer belongs to the court alone. It now belongs to politics, diplomacy, markets, military command rooms, the streets of Caracas, and the global flow of information. His personal story is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies the fate of an entire country that has lived on the edge for many years, and has once again reached a point where any single move can turn into a collapse. Yet the most important question remains a human one. What will change for people who lived without medicine, without stable jobs, without confidence in tomorrow? What happens to those who left and dream of returning, and to those who stayed and learned to survive? Will there be a new chance for a normal life, or will the country enter an even darker period? In documentary storytelling, these are the questions that keep viewers watching, because they are not about presidents but about millions. As of today, Nicolas Maduro's story is not an ending but a crossroads. He is in New York as a defendant, facing severe charges and a long path of legal procedure ahead. Venezuela is in intense uncertainty, searching for a new shape of power while the streets wait to see how it ends. And the world watches this as a warning. The era in which leaders were considered untouchable can end abruptly and without elegant rules. If you enjoyed this type of video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us grow and create even more high-quality documentary stories. This was Criminal Group. See you next time.